now that you watched that how to hang drywall for beginners, we're going to watch a basic tape and spackle video that is going to cover basically the outline that I talked about. I'm not sure if it's going to cover all of it. It might not. Again, the series that we have after this will kind of help you. Again, it's important that you watch that series. You got to act like you're doing this yourself. Okay, as a matter of fact, I wish I could. If you guys could go buy some tape and spackle some areas, that would be good, so you get the feel for it. But again, you don't necessarily have to do that. You just have to pay attention to the videos. In this video, we're going to introduce, again, the basics of tape and spackling so you have a good understanding of it. All right, let's watch this video here.
So this video is really Drywall Finishing 101. How to feather an edge. Because if you're not able to feather an edge, you're going to be doing a lot more sanding than you need to. And as most of us have experienced, sanding really is the least pleasurable part of doing this job. So first off, what is feathering an edge? Feathering an edge is just simply getting rid of these hard lines by bending your knife. So what you're doing is you're putting a lot of pressure, you're bending the blade, and what that does is it completely gets rid of that edge and leaves an almost imperceptible edge on there. There really isn't anything to sand on that one spot. We'll do the next one. And I've also left a nice little lift off right in the middle there. So that's what feathering an edge is. It's actually really simple. It's really easy to do. However, it is something that people might struggle with. And there's two reasons that you might be struggling with feathering an edge. One is maybe you're learning how to use a trowel. So it's a lot harder to bend a trowel and feather that edge, especially the bottom one. That's the hardest one for people. And the bigger the trowel, the harder it is to feather that edge. So if I'm using a 16-inch trowel, it takes considerably more pressure to actually feather that edge. And oftentimes, you can see that there is a slight hard edge there. Not like the one that I showed you on film, but a little bit. More sanding than you should be having to do. Again, the first reason you may be experiencing unfeathered edges is just lack of experience with the tools. You really want to learn how to bend that blade. And it's about speed, right? So you get the material on there, and then you bend the blade, feather that edge. Actually, another reason I just remembered is if your tools are really old and worn out, they don't feather as easily. A newer knife with a more squared edge feathers much easier. So you could actually file the ends of your knives. Like mine start to get pretty old. In fact, they get really sharp because they get totally polished and burnished from the paper and the gypsum. It's like a burnishing compound and they get sharp. Like I've actually sliced myself on these. So you could take a file and wear that away square, and that would help. However, having a nicely rounded over edge is actually really good for skimming your final coat. It compresses the mud gently and nicely and leaves a really nice smooth skim coat, whereas a really square edge will actually kind of pull and tear a skim coat. I find really the only benefit to having a square edge on your tool is just the feathering. And if you just increase the angle a little bit that you're feathering at, a worn down blade works just fine. I've actually never spent much time sharpening my blades. So the next reason, and probably the most common reason that you're getting unfeathered edges, is actually the mud getting too much time on the wall. So let's say you got to finish your flat joint, and it takes you a lot longer to apply the mud than how quickly I'm able to do it. Okay, so let's leave this mud on here for maybe 2 minutes, and I'm going to come back and try and feather the edge and see what happens. So I just spent a couple minutes browsing Instagram. Alright, let's try and feather these edges. So there's the one I did earlier, which is pretty nice. Now let's take a look at this one. It's built up, jagged, and not anywhere near as nice. Even that, it's got a lip on it for sure. So that's an extra couple of passes with a sanding pole. There's a couple ways you can fix this. So this one that's already on the wall, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just really quickly put a bit more mud on that edge right there. Same with down here. Just very quickly spreading some mud there. And now I'm actually just going to really quickly feather it with my knife. And now I'm going to finish this joint. So the reason that those hard edges happened is when the mud sits on the board for too long, the drywall starts sucking the moisture out of it, and then therefore, so you've already got a kind of dry, hard edge there. So when you try and feather it, you can't push the material because it's dry. So what I did there was I just applied a little bit more mud really quick, and it kind of reactivates it and then feathered my edge again. So now you can see it's much improved, much better. That's how you can get rid of those. And also, if you've already coated it and it's dry, the other thing you can do is you can, again, just do that side swipe over top of the hard edge and wipe it tight. And what that's going to do is just fill it in so there's less sanding. So it's up to you. You can either sand more or you can fill in that unfeathered edge with a new feathered edge. Lastly, let's get into how to avoid those in the first place. So let's say you are slow at applying mud. And you've got a lot to cover. And maybe it's a tricky joint. So it's something that's requiring you to mess around a lot. So instead of just leaving this, what you can do is you can feather your edge right away. And then you can keep loading the mud onto the rest of the surrounding area. Because you can kind of rest easy knowing that your edge is feathered. And that way it won't form at all. I hope this video clarifies what a feathered edge is, how to get them, and how to fix them if they're not working out for you.